Hello. Welcome, welcome, awesome. All right, so, I love you too, random citizen. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna start off with some cool art reveals. My team has put together some things for me to show you, and then we'll do a Q&A, and then I have a reading. I'm going to apologize in advance for this reading. It is very weird. I'll give you more of an explanation for why. But for once, you don't have to leave if you don't want spoilers, because there's no spoilers. It's a thing that will probably never get published because it is so weird. So, the first piece here is something I've been waiting for a long time to show you guys. We have, coming up in March, we have a crowdfunding campaign for what we're calling the Hoid Storybook Collection. Yep. And key to one of these is we got the awesome Howard Lyon. You might know him. He did the art for Trust of the Emerald Sea for our edition. Well, I went to him and I said, imagine you were going to do The Dog and the Dragon as a classic children's storybook. And we took the text, and Howard did just a fantastic job. So that's going to be one of the stories that we're doing. If you want to see previews of the others, we will have those all ready by Nexus. And, of course, we'll record that so you can watch it after the fact, all right? So look for that coming up. We also have the Lost Metal Leatherbound coming. We used to wait 10 years, but then we figured we'd rather finish off series, so this one isn't quite 10 years between our editions, the original edition of the Leatherbound. But with this, we have some pretty nice end pages. These are by Brian Mark Taylor. We've been working on, yes, some Brian Mark Taylor fans. He's local, so he's pretty awesome. And he did these two end pages just of Ellendale, streets and things, and you can kind of see down the canals. We're very fond of those. Another piece we have here is by Victor, let's see, let me get the, Victor Adame Minguez. And this might be my favorite piece in the Lost Metal. Those who have read the book know what this picture is doing. Let's see. And then we also have our release for this year was Isles of the Emberdark, which many of you got. We've got our editions at the booth, but if you're interested in the kind of Tor and UK editions, which will be a little cheaper, we've got the cover reveal for those guys coming up. These are awesome covers. And let me see, these are done by Brian Edward Miller. Last thing I've got here in the sort of preview / announcements is we are doing Wheel of Time Leatherbounds. Yes. For you Wheel of Time fans, we wanted to do something fun to commemorate this. So we went to Blackbeard Swords, I believe is the name of it, Blackbeard Projects on YouTube, and we decided to forge a Heronmark blade. Yeah. So I think we made like 2 or 3 of these. Maybe we only made 1. I can't remember. But we're going to give it away. So the way you get this is by signing up for the Wheel of Time Leatherbound newsletter. We have a separate newsletter for this. This is kind of one of my mandates is we don't want to spam people, and I don't want to fill my newsletter with things that people might not be interested in, right? You guys get so much spam. I get so much spam. So we have a separate mailing list for this. If you're signed up for it already, you're already signed up for the drawing. But if you would like to, then you can sign up for the newsletter. This will give you updates on when we have the Wheel of Time Leatherbounds. We're not going to do a crowdfunding campaign on this. We're just going to do a pre-order. Then on Koloss Head Munching Day, my birthday, very coincidental that that's the holiday where the Koloss eat people's heads. If you want to sign up for that, then go right ahead and we will do a drawing for that and give away a sword. I'm not sure what the logistics of us sending you a sword are, But I'm sure my team will figure it out. This was their idea. So for about 30 minutes now, what we're going to do is we're going to do the Q&A. Now, let me prep you for the Q&A. Try not to give spoilers. There are plenty of people in here who have not read certain books and would not appreciate having them spoiled. So if you can possibly circumlocute, talk around anything that might be a spoiler, or if there's no way to do it without spoiling, anything in the last half of the book to 2/3 of the book, then come up maybe with a different question. And I will do my best to answer you, all right? So, question number 1 right here.
How's it going, Brandon?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. I didn't bring my mist cloak, so I brought my Kandra.
Oh, well, that's a very good Kandra.
And so my question is about a Kandra. If a Kandra were to eat a dragon, would they be able to do the inherent dragon shapeshift?
If a Kandra ate a dragon, would they be able to do the shapeshift? No, they would not. So Kandra, taking someone's form doesn't let them have access to most of the things that they would be able to do. Like it doesn't give them, if for instance you eat an allomancer, you don't end up with allomancy. And in the same way, there is something going on with the dragons that wouldn't allow this. So, excellent question. All right, next. Oh, they've got it all set up so neatly. That's awesome. Hey, nice costume.
Thank you. Thanks for the inspiration for the costume.
Yeah. Did I see you yesterday? Yeah, I saw you yesterday. Okay.
So my question is about metal.
Okay.
Somewhat spoilery, but not
too bad.
Nothing
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Nothing about the plot. It's just about some of the world building. That's okay.
Exactly. So as we see with ATM alloys,
yes,
they kind of punt the power off to other people. Like with,
yes,
Electrum ATM, you see other people's features instead
yes,
of your own.
Yes.
With Harmonium, would that then allow you to, because it's an alloy of the 2 god metals?
Yep.
Would that allow you to punt the power of Mistborn to another person? Or, because it's a mix of Atium and Lerasium, would that make you a full Feruchemist?
It would blow you up. But if you were somehow able to make it work, you get a RAFO card. Becky's got them over here. I can give you something, though. I sat down, and in order to write Era 3, I wrote this giant document that explains exactly how metal works and all the intricacies of it and the medallions and things. And I sent it to the Arcanist, whose job these are some people that I have on staff. Basically, they were the hardcore super fans who understood the Magicism the best. And so I recruited them and put them to work, which is what I like to do. And so I recruited them, I put them to work, and now they spent all summer poking holes in the document so I can make sure all of my T's are crossed, my I's are dotted, and my adium is ingested. So I am now going back. I just started back into Era 3 with this document in hand of all the things that I need to make sure that I make very clear. So if you're too knowledgeable in finding holes in my magic systems, I will put you to work. Thank you for the question. All right, go ahead.
Okay. In Wind and Truth, non-spoilery, there's
yes,
a scene where Kaladin is practicing right, his forms, and then Syl joins him, and it turns into this elegant dance.
Yes.
And everything. And as a martial artist, that hit me really, really hard because I've been in situations similar.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask what your inspiration was for that scene.
So let's see if I can talk without spoilers. There's some certain things that I've been waiting for a long time to be able to do in the books, and that scene was one of them. I had to get the characters to the place where this scene would make sense. And my inspiration for that scene was basically, what if you could dance with someone who was magically light on their feet, and what would that look like? And how would that feel? And it was just that simple inspiration mixed with more of character motivation inspirations. So,
Hi.
Hi.
I have a 3-part question. Should be really quick answer.
Okay, great.
What misting would you be?
Yep.
What faring would you be? And what order of Knight Radiant would you be?
All right, so we'll go in reverse order because that's how you ask them. So night rating, I took the quiz, and both my wife and I got Bondsmith, which is the odd one to get because there can't be too many of them. But I guess I get to decide who they are. So, so got Bondsmith, and so fairing. This is going to be pretty obvious to people, but I would love to be able to store all these ideas I have in metal mines and pop them back out when I need them, because a lot of times as a writer. The writers in the crowd will back me up on this. You'll be working on a story, and you'll have this fantastic idea for another story, and it will start bugging you, and you'll be like, no story, not right now. I am writing this other one, and you kind of have this sense of, well, maybe someday I'll get to it, maybe someday I won't. But if I could stick that into a metal mine so it would go out of my brain, but I wouldn't lose it, that would be awesome. You can probably tell that what I would pick for Allomancy would be a coin shot, because just being able to jump around and fly and things like that. Oh, yep, you've got your wax costume there. Yeah, I would just love to be able to do that. And in our modern society, there's just so many cool sources of metal you could play with and mess up. So yeah. Have I given you a pin for coming in cosplay? Becky, you got a pin? This is our cosplay pin. So if you come through my line in costume, I have a pin that you can only get from me. That is our cosplay pin. So thank you for the question. Go ahead.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
If you were to write a cozy fantasy, for example, Vasher being chosen by the cat distribution system.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that would be a really good one.
Yes.
Oh, what a great suggestion.
What character and what would they do?
What character? If I had to choose a cozy fantasy. So for those who don't know, true cozy fantasy, which I've never really written before because they try to have low stakes. I got close in Tress and Yumi, but the stakes are still just too high. It's very hard for me to not put the fate of the world at stake. I don't know what it is about me, but if I were going to choose one, you came up with one that's probably better than what I would do. Vasher having to be, I don't know, like there's a cool world where you take Wayne and you take Lopen and you put them together and you put them in charge of something that's not too high stakes, but also like they're like, all right, Wayne and Lopen, your job is to make sure, you got to run the post office, or, you have to make this cafe succeed no matter what, and you both have to use your ideas and see, yeah. There's a really good cozy fantasy somewhere in there with the two of them buddying up. Make a tea shop. Yeah, there you go. Wayne and Lopen's tea.
Hello, Brandon.
Hey.
You're renowned for being really inclusive with mental health problems in your characters. So I wanted to ask how you make those characters and how you want real-world people who struggle with those problems to react to reading your books.
Well, excellent question. So what do I do? The answer of what to do is one that's been kind of a long road for me to figure out. The nice thing is, in our current, the way the world works, I have access to a whole lot of people's blogs and a whole lot of people's social media. And people tend to be very helpful for writers, talking about things such as, one of the best things if you want to write about something that you don't explicitly know, that you haven't explicitly lived, is to look and do a quick Google search for, what do people get wrong about X? Because I could tell you for days what people get wrong about writers in movies and things like this. They tend to be pretty good at it, though, as an aside, because the writers who are writing it, as long as the people who don't know about writing don't mess up the story, the writers tend. But you know what I mean. You can get that whether it's for forensic science or dissociative identity disorder. You can find these things, and that can be a pretty good point to be like, all right, here are the warning things that I don't want to do. Doing your research on top of that, but none of that research can replace having people who are experts at it read your stories and give you advice. I often share, stories. This one isn't about mental health. I share it just because, in this way, it's less likely to cause problems. But I thought I did all my research and knew how to do G-forces in the Skyward books. I did a ton of research, but I've never been in a fighter jet. I gave it to 3 fighter pilots and like, oh, Brandon, you are so bad at this. I'm like, oh, come on, I did my research. And they're like, it's like this, this, and this. I'm like, how did I miss that? And so lots of revisions required. So doing that with areas topics where you can do some harm. And so that you don't do that harm is really important to me. The main reason that I wanted to make sure I did a good job with it was to make sure that I wasn't perpetuating problems, right? Like, I want to do good rather than bad with what I have. And I find it really, I don't know, I feel like I have a mandate to try to produce the world as it is. And try to reproduce people as they are in my stories. And I wasn't seeing enough of that when I was reading. And I said, well, you know, the people in my life often struggle with something like this. I feel like if you were put in very high-stress situations like the characters are, you would have some more people just naturally dealing with this. And I wanted to do it, but I wanted to do a good job of it. So what do I want you to get from it? Well, I would love for you to read it and be, first off, okay, he's not messing it up too badly. That would be number one. But number two, if I can do a good enough job that you look and you see it and you say, yes, this is actually helping people kind of understand what it is to, you know, be me, I would love that to be the case. Thank you for the question. Hi, Tress, have I given you a pin yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, you've got a pin.
Okay.
We'll get it to you in a second.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was possible to make Hoid feel awkward or uncomfortable, and if so, what makes him uncomfortable?
Have you seen that scene where Shalon hugged him? He wasn't expecting a hug at that point. He gets into his mindset of how things are going to go, and you know he's a showman. He has in his head, he's like, this is how it's going to play out. And whenever someone breaks that a little bit, he can always be a little embarrassed. But I mean, you are from a book where he was thoroughly embarrassed the moment he realized that his sense of taste was not working and functioning as well as it should be. So not terribly hard to actually embarrass him. Basically, if things don't go the way that he plans them to, he will play it off and pretend it was planned that way all along, but inside he'll be deeply embarrassed. Thanks for the question. Hi, have I given you a pin yet?
No, I haven't got
All right, we'll get you one. Yes, nice costume.
Thank you. My question is, so I'm an identical twin.
Ooh.
And so I was wondering, in the Mistborn magic system,
Yes.
Being an Allomancer is hereditary.
Yep.
So I was wondering if 2 identical twins were born to nobleman parents, would they, and they were mistings, would they both, like, would one of them be able to have powers and the other couldn't? Or
Yeah.
would they both have to have powers? Or if they were both mistings, could they have different misting powers?
So most likely occurrence is that they would have different misting powers, because while it is hereditary, remember in the Cosmere, you have both what we call a spiritual DNA, your connections and things on in the spiritual realm and physical. They're going to be close enough that it would be really, really rare that both wouldn't have powers. It would be most common that they would have different powers, but not too infrequent they'd have the same one. What an excellent question. I've never been asked that before. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, where did you get the inspiration for the Way of Kings?
Where did I get the inspiration for the Way of Kings? All right, sit back and wait for a sec. This one's going to be a little bit longer, all right? Because any given book has more than one inspiration. For me, I'm always looking for really good ideas for each character that I'm going to write about, often more than one. I'm looking for a multitude of interesting ideas for the setting and interesting ideas for the plot. I often talk about a story. When a story is building, I've often had these ideas separately, and they're like, little atoms bouncing around in my head, and they smash into each other, and they form something new. And when all of these pieces are coming together and forming something that is spectacular and is better than any of the individual ideas, I know I have a book. Stormlight, I can trace the first idea for the setting back to the idea of a storm. I don't know if any of you here have gone to southern Utah and hiked the slot canyons in southern Utah. There's one, I was in college. I had a roommate who was a photography major. He was nature photography. And I just wanted to sit in my room and write books, but I knew that I needed to actually leave my room to get things to write about. And he hauled me off. I was his lovely assistant. I carried the camera equipment. This is what he called me. And he would take pictures. And he loved to go into the slot canyons. And while we were in one of the slot canyons, we were getting there, he's like, oh, we won't be able to go in today because there is a forecast of some rain. And I'm like, oh, we'll ruin your camera equipment. He's like, oh no, it would kill us. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, if it rains, even a small amount, it can cause a giant flash flood in the canyons because all the rain from a large plain will funnel into the slot canyon and create a torrent and a rush. And even if it's a light sprinkle sometimes, it can be extremely dangerous. And that idea to me said, oh, there's something there. And I started thinking about these slot canyons. If you read Way of Kings Prime, which is the version of Way of Kings I wrote in 2002, which is really weird because there's no Spren yet. And there's not Knights Radiant. There's a hint of the Knights Radiant at the end, but it's very weird. Talon is one of the main characters. But in it, there's a whole sequence in the slot canyon that eventually I repurposed to Words of Radiance, where there's another one like that. So world building was the idea of a slot canyon was the very first. And I spun that into the idea of a world that was hit by magical storms periodically. But as you can see, that's only one of the ideas. There are a lot of other ideas with the Radiance, the Spren, all of these things. But I'll leave those for now, and I'll talk about the first character idea. The very first character idea was Dalinar. I wrote Dalinar for the first time when I was 16 or 17. And I had an interesting idea for the brother of the king after the king is assassinated. Spoilers for chapter 1. Prologue, actually. Like I said, we can spoil like the first third. So king is killed, and you're the king's brother, and your nephew is a bad king. What do? Right? I love these conflicts. What is your duty to your people? What is your duty to your family? If your nephew is ruling poorly, at what point do you stand up and take control to lead the country? And that was the very first seed of an idea for that. And then the first plot idea I can think of was me reading fantasy back in the 80s and 90s and kind of feeling this sense of melancholy from the fact that one of the themes of fantasy that Tolkien started was the magic going away, which is pretty cool. It lends to this really interesting melancholy sense. In the Wheel of Time, there's this sense that we're going to lose the magic. We are heading toward technology. And in Tolkien, the elves are leaving and the age of man is coming. And I wanted to write a story about the magic coming back. And that sort of became a theme of my books because it is a theme of Elantris as well. But when I was working on Stormlight, the thing I can trace back is like, what if the magic is coming back? What if we are instead renewing the oaths or learning about them and standing up and becoming Knights Radiant again? That was really interesting to me, and so that became the plot theme. So I warned you, long answer, but very good question. I love your shirt. It says, fueled by tacos and sarcasm.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
So my question, what would be your advice to someone who has gotten so attached to like one of your like main characters?
Right.
I would say a character that is spread through stuff, and then maybe could not read the book, and after that person goes away.
Okay, for what is my advice? So excellent question. Way to talk around it. I appreciate you doing that. You did a really good job. So what is my advice? You get to decide how to interface with my fiction and any fiction, right? Like, if you read this and you're like, you know what, I think I'm done for a while, I'm not going to be offended. right? Now, what would I recommend? I would recommend a couple of things. First off, I am not an author who sits around thinking about how can I shock people with character deaths. I don't. In fact, characters dying is generally one of the least interesting things that can happen to them, right? Because there's not more stories to tell and things like that. At the same time, I want to write characters who are taking risks, who are making decisions, and I want to give the characters that volition. When I write books, I tend to plot out my plot intricately and plot out my setting, and then put the characters into it, and then give them a bit of volition. They get to, as I'm writing them, if they would make a decision that the plot doesn't call for, I either have to rewrite the character or change the plot, and I usually change the plot. This lets the characters take on that sort of verisimilitude of life that is, I think, really important for stories. Because of that, they're allowed to take risks. Because they're allowed to take risks, at times, you can't pull all your punches. And so it's the ability to the characters to take risks that makes the things they achieve worthwhile, if that makes sense. And if there were no opportunity for those risks to have dire consequences, then what kind of power does those decisions have? And so because of that, my recommendation to you would say, in most cases where it's one of these characters, they have been able to make a decision, and I feel really great that they got to make that decision. And that enhances who they are and the decisions that they were making and just their story. I realize it can be painful sometimes, but there's always more stories to tell, and the ramifications of what they've done will change other people's lives, often for the better, sometimes for the worse, but always for the more interesting, I hope. That's what I would say to you, but do understand I'm not trying to actually make things difficult for readers. I'm trying to tell the best story I can. But thank you. It's actually really impactful to me that it has that effect. Does that make sense? It means that the story is working to one extent, but I also am sorry.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
Word on the street is that you might be a fan of a particular trading card game out there, but
I haven't made a lot of talk about it. I really don't let people know. I'm surprised you figured out. Yes, it's me and Pokemon, right?
Exactly. Well, my question would be, if there were to be a Kaladin Stormblessed card, what color mana would it use?
Okay.
And would it be a flip, or would it use the partner mechanic?
I might have like 10 versions of Kaladin that I've come up with in my own little playing with things. I'll tell you one of them. It would be a flip, right? I think that the characters going through transformations are really interesting. It's integral to the Stormlight archive. And so it would go from, Kaladin the slave to Kaladin Stormblessed. And I think Kaladin on one side is mono-white. And in fact, he's probably mono-white on both sides. So you can argue for a little bit of some other colors. You can argue for quite a lot. You can argue for some green. You can argue for some blue. But I think Kaladin would be mono-white. And I think that you do some sort of effect where on one side, the front side, he's able to redirect damage to himself. And if he does that and lives, then he flips, right? Something like that. So, yep. So yes, that was not Pokemon, that's Magic the Gathering. For those who are very confused, they're like, what? So, yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Brandon.
Hey.
So in the Edge Dancer novella, we learn about 10 different flavors of pancakes in Yeda.
Yes, yes, yes.
Are each of them associated with an order of Knight Radiant? And if so, what are those flavors? And will they eventually come into a Cosmere cookbook?
All right. This is the one that gets the most applause. Not the history of the Way of Kings. No, it's the pancake question. So I'm not going to list them all off for you. But if we do a Cosmere cookbook, we will put them all in, I promise. I actually don't think they're all associated with an order of Radiant. I think that 10 is just a number of mythological import. Over here, you might say, Oftentimes when we're writing, we'll try to look for rules of 3, or we'll try to get things to a dozen. On Roshar, they try to get things to 5 or 10. It just feels natural to them. It feels odd if there's 9 of something and whatnot, and so that's the reason. Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
I am wondering if Spren were real in our world.
Uh-huh.
What Spren would you be most excited to interact with, and what Spren would you, or what type of Spren would you be least excited to interact with?
Okay, least excited we'll give no spoilers, but Bondsmith Spren are pretty dangerous universally. I think I would want to stay very far away, despite the fact that the survey thing. Isaac made that, by the way. He did a really good job with that you can take. This what's your order. Yeah, good job, Isaac. And so what would I be most interested in interacting with? Well, ask my children, I am a bit of a prankster now and then. Just a tiny bit of one. I might like to troll my children. And a lot of Windspren have this sort of trolling side to them. You haven't seen as many of those, but you've seen one in particular. I think having a Windspren to troll my children would be really handy. So maybe do that, though I think they would get along best with a cryptic because, I just have this feeling that particularly my middle son and a cryptic would go off and have these fantastic conversations that the rest of us wouldn't understand. Thank you. Hello.
Hi. Warbreaker is my favorite book literally ever.
Oh, thank you.
And I was curious if you ever planned on doing a prequel to it about maybe Nightblood's creation.
So I haven't planned a prequel. What I've planned is a sequel that has flashbacks to those things, right? I'm very careful with prequels. I feel like you can do a prequel that's really spectacular, but a lot of times they're dangerous because there's this sense of that you've already seen where this is going. And as a reader, I sometimes don't love a prequel. Once in a while, again, they can be fantastic. But I would say the fantastic prequels are outnumbered by I already know what's going to happen. It's not working for me as well. And so I always prefer something that if I'm going to get those scenes in, I do them as flashbacks. And so I do. The book is named Nightblood. I will write it at some point. And it is kind of balancing some flashbacks about what happened with Vasher and all those people and what's going on, that leads into other places you might have seen Vasher. Uh-huh.
All right, so my question, given the location of the upcoming bookstore,
yes,
is there a chance that you would be interested in purchasing up the Evermore Park to bring it back, or to make something Cosmere there?
Okay. I get asked this a lot. It actually is a really good question. We do own about 9 acres next to Evermore, and that's where we are thinking of putting our bookstore. I've thought about it seriously. I really have. It's expensive, and I worry about if we jump into something too soon, it's very easy for companies like mine that are doing very well to spend all of their liquid cash and then stop doing very well, even though they're selling things and whatnot. It's not off the table, but it would be a dangerous thing to do, and so I would want to be very careful with it. If we did it, it would probably not be to bring Evermore back, right? I just don't know that the Evermore model would work really well, but Evermore might be a really good place for a bookstore, and then that other land we could use for something else or sell it off. They have some nice structures and things on there, so it's not impossible, but it is expensive. Even for me, it's pretty expensive. And I don't want to do anything that risks the jobs of my employees, right? And things like that. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm nervous. Okay, if all the good boys and girls on Roshar believe in Santa Claus,
yes.
What would the resulting Spren be like? How intelligent would it be? What would it look like, and how would it manifest?
Okay, you are asking, actually, it sounds silly, but a really good question. Because this kind of digs into the nature of the Cosmere. So, couple things you have to keep in mind. Once something like this starts to become self-aware in the Cosmere, it gains volition, right? And so you would probably start, if everyone believed in the same Santa Claus, it would start to manifest a spren that is going to act like Santa Claus, right? But that acting exactly like Santa Claus is not going to last terribly long by the scale of spren. It might last for a couple generations of humans, right? But that thing is going to become self-aware, it's going to see itself, and it's going to take some of the mandates that it is given by the people thinking about it as part of like its creation and its mandates to exist, but it's going to learn how decide how to interpret them. And so you're going to end up with a Santa Claus that is a little more spren-like, and a little bit, it's going to depend, like, since it's on Roshar, it's going to have some honor and some cultivation to it, and how that kind of imagine that as its genetics, right? And imagine how people perceive it as its nurture. So it's nature, it's nurture, and then it has its own volition. We don't talk about that as much. And those three things are going to create something that's not exactly like you're imagining, but it'll have those roots. Cool. Yeah. What a cool question. Well done.
Hello there.
Hello.
So I have a quick question. Kaladin describes his first squad leader, Tux, as always looking slightly odd or something's off about his appearance, which sounds very similar to the description of Sleepless in the novella Edge.
Yeah, Dawn Shard.
Dawn.
Yep.
I'm blanking on the time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, totally fine. Dawn Shard.
Yeah. So my question is Tux a Sleepless? And follow-up question: if he is he one we've seen before? Like, can we get a name drop?
RAFO. RAFO, but that he looks a little different is there for a purpose. Okay. Good question. For those who don't know what RAFO is, it's a little card I give you that says read and find out. It's not promising you'll actually find out, but it is suggesting that maybe I will put an answer in someday.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Real quick, Micah says hi.
Micah DeMo. I was just speaking about Micah.
Yeah.
How do you know Micah?
I'm his nephew.
Okay. Well, Micah is the photographer that I was the lovely assistant to, who dragged me all over the place. I put him in the Mistborn books because he's my roommate. I said, hey, your name is French sounding. Can I use you? We're using French derivation. He's like, yes, you can put me in, but I have to be cool. I have to live, and I have to get a girl. Those are his rules. He's like, it doesn't have to be the girl of the book, but I have to get a girl. So that's where Captain DeMo came from in the books.
He's mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah.
Just every year we go talk to it or mention your books. Just,
He's pretty awesome. I went out to dinner with him just a little while ago.
But my question for you is, as someone who DMs and as someone who you've mentioned that you play D&D and also you write so many amazing books.
Yeah.
How do you get through writing a character that is super important for your story, has a lot of importance to what the other characters are doing, and even some of your other characters may like, but you personally hate with a violent passion?
Okay. How did I write Cadswain? And by the way, we'll do this as the last one because then I'm going to go into the rating, so I'm terribly sorry to the rest of you. What's that? Oh, terribly sorry to the rest of you. Yes. So we'll do this one, then we'll do yours. So what do you do? Well, it's different for role-playing and for writing. I'll answer as a writer. I can't afford, as a writer, to actually hate any characters, right? Cadswain was not my favorite character early when I was just a Wheel of Time reader. Cadswain was my, you're not my real mom, give me Moiraine back character. But when I took over, I had to be, as a writer, say, I can't afford to be like this. I need to, when I'm writing a character, I have to understand them, I have to be sympathetic to them, and I have to write them as if I love this character. And that mindset really is getting into their motivations, why they do what they do, and having empathy even for the characters that are awful, right? As a DM, it's more of a conversation between you and the players, right? If this is an NPC that you're creating for the players, I would ask myself, why would I ever hate a character that the players are loving, right? Like, if the players are enjoying something, then you're probably doing something right as a GM. You might just be then in that mindset of, but I want to tell this other good story. Well, as a GM, that's not why you're there. As a GM, you're there for the players. When you're a player, then you get to have fun having the story of your character. When you're a GM, your only job is to make sure they're having a good time. And so that requires kind of a mindset change as well, just a different one, and that's what I would recommend.
Hello.
Hello, all right, last question. You also get a pin, unless you already got one.
I have not got a pin yet.
All right, we'll give you that.
Okay, thank you. All right, my question is, are shades pulling water from their victims through the same mechanic as the Luhel bond, and are shades damaged by salt in the same way that aether spores are?
I'm going to say you are theorizing on the correct direction. They are pulling water in a very similar way. But weather salt will give you a RAFO card on, so you get to be RAFO'd.
Thank you.
All right, so that was last question. Oh, or did they tell you guys? Okay, can we have no more questions after these two, okay? Greg, it's not your fault. We'll go ahead and do these, don't worry.
Okay, so basically the idea of a Mistborn movie has been up in the air for as long as I can remember now.
And me too.
So, and I've been thinking that instead of like making one of your big series as a movie, how about you instead of start with one of your like small books, like maybe The Emperor's Soul or Elantris,
so
something
you
that
are
sounds risky.
a very smart individual because we actually tried that. So one of the very first things that I sold was The Emperor's Soul, trying to get that made. And so that was back in the days where I wasn't as big a deal, and so people are like, this fantasy thing, and that didn't work out. I have tried that. I've tried like Legion. I've tried Tress. Basically, you just kind of have to see in Hollywood what starts taking off. And so I am absolutely open to it. Absolutely open to it. And there's several things in like very early stages of production. I'll talk about the state of the Sanderson in a few months. But nothing is very far along. But there's a few that are in early stages that are not the big Mistborn or Stormlight sort of things. We'll see if they go anywhere, though. But you are thinking along smart lines. All right. Yeah.
Mr. Sanderson, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. This might be kind of a dumb question to end on, but I'll ask it non-spoilerly.
Okay, great.
There is a character who is bonded to 2 Spren.
Yes.
Which is not normal, but apparently is possible.
Yes.
Could she hypothetically also have 2 husbands?
Could she hypothetically? I don't think that's a dumb question. A lot of people want this. This is hypothetically possible. But I probably would suggest that's a good thing for fan fiction to explore.
I'm on it.
Yeah. It's a good thing for fan fiction to explore. I already did the polyamory thing in Wheel of Time. And so well. Oh, well, thank you. So anyway, I'll leave that to fan fiction, but it could be a RAFO. It's possible. So, all right. We're going to go to the reading now. I've got about 24 minutes left. So what is this? What am I going to read to you? Well, you might have noticed, if you've read several of my books, that a while ago I was trying to figure out a good voice for Hoid, right? And Hoid, as a storyteller for a long-form sort of novel thing, it was a bit of a challenge to figure out what his voice would be and what types of stories he would tell. I tried a bunch of different things. This is the one that went a little too far. And you'll see what I mean when I'm reading it. I wanted the stories that Hoid was telling to actually be canonical to the Cosmere, and him not be exaggerating too much. He does occasionally. This one went a little too far. So we're going to read this. I don't have a name for this. It's just called Chapter 1, The Princess. And we'll let you see how, if I let Hoid go a little too far, how it might turn out. On Princess Celebrin's 13th birthday, her father named a day of the week after her. Though the signs have been clear all along, that day, her 13th birthday, was probably the first time Celebrin should have realized she was spoiled. Younger children can be forgiven for not picking up on such intricacies, as they are, naturally, oblivious, sociopathic, self-interested machines who continue to draw breath only because our species evolved oxytocin. Not Oxycontin, we didn't evolve that. But a teen, well, a teen should have realized the truth. The massive undertaking of renaming a day involved replacing calendars, educating the public, and consoling the clergy. Fortunately, the goddess the day had been named after wasn't a popular one. The king, in a rare moment of wisdom, figured that if the goddess wasn't mad about the whole not being worshipped thing, she might not mind this either. On Princess Celebrant's 14th birthday, the king gave her a castle. Never mind that she already had 3 she'd never visited. This should have clued Celebrant to the fact that she was spoiled. But the kingdom did need a great number of castles. The war against the dragons was ongoing, after all. On her 15th birthday, Celebrant's father gave her a vault full of gold. This was necessary, you see, as she'd used up the previous one. It is normal, Celebrant thought, for a child to have an allowance. And vaults of gold seemed common, really, considering how many her family had. On her 16th birthday, her father gave her the color red. Though this was mostly symbolic, it really should have warned her. Remarkably, she had a near miss on her 17th birthday. You see, the king banned sugar for a day for everyone except for Celebrant. So that evening, she sat at her dinner, staring at her lemon meringue pie, and asked the question. "Father," she said, "how does everyone else not having sugar today make my dessert any better?" Come again, dear?" he asked, eating his own pie, because, of course, he had his own slice, despite the ban. "My dessert," she said, pointing with her fork. "Wouldn't it taste just as sweet to me if everyone else could have sugar?" She edged toward understanding like a baby bird on the rim of the nest. Surely, this decree would make people angry. Surely they were supposed to enjoy her birthday. Didn't she want them to? "Ah," her father said, pretending to understand. Here, see, if they don't have sugar for a day, they'll appreciate it all the more. They'll remember just how sweet it is after a day of fasting. Yes, they will. Just as they'll remember your sweetness, my dear." It was an answer. Not a good one, but like a strong gust of wind to frighten the baby bird back into the nest, this worked. Celebrant smothered her concerns in meringue and went to bed. Finally, her 18th birthday. Worried about how she'd reacted to her exclusive day of sugar, her father reasoned his gift hadn't been dramatic enough to impress her. So for Celebrant's grand 18th birthday, the king made her name legally unique. Nobody else was allowed to be called Celebrant. The day of the week, though, was fine. As one might imagine, her name had become quite a popular choice for girls over the last 18 years. That changed in a legislative flash, and in an instant, some 10,000 girls were forced to change their names. You'd have thought this, at last, would give Celebrant herself some inkling, some hint of a clue that she was spoiled. Instead, she reasoned that everyone should have a unique name, and so this legislation made perfect sense. Her parents had worked hard to come up with something original, and a name was the only gift Celebrant had from her late mother, who had been eaten by a dragon soon after giving birth. Celebrant would likely have missed understanding this birthday, as she had the others, save for one factor. She had a bodyguard, a youth named Dristel, who had been sent back from the front lines after having his right arm ripped off. He'd recovered and recuperated as best one could following such an event, and he wore 3 medals proclaiming how brave he'd been. Dristel didn't feel brave. Losing his arm had made him scream and wet himself, but he confided in his father, a grizzled veteran and head of the princess's bodyguards. The older man had said something legitimately wise. "You on your feet now, lad?" "Yes, father." His father had tapped each medal in turn. "They're for that part, not for the part where you lost the arm." Dristel had understood. We'll talk about his nightmares, his cold sweats, and his months spent lying awake at night trembling later. For now, let's just say he understood. Celebrant's 18th happened roughly 2 days after his assignment to serve under his father, watching over the princess. The evening of her birthday, after the glory of the fruit punch synchronized swimming routine, the novelty of the dancing cattle, and a spectacular indoor firework display, Celebrant stood on her balcony with a small complement of 20 bodyguards and around as many handmaidens. She looked up at the moon shimmering in the sky, and she wondered idly, "Do you think the dancing cattle were better trained last year?" "No, Highness," said one of the handmaidens, beating the others to it. "They were so spectacular." "You sure?" Celebrant asked. "Absolutely," another handmaiden said. "I don't think they made a pyramid last year, did they?" "That's true," Celebrant said. "And I suppose they did taste better this year, too." That was the moment. Driscoll's eyes had been bulging all night, but this really threw him. Though he'd been instructed to be silent, he couldn't help himself. Perhaps once you've had part of yourself eaten by a large pseudo-reptile, the monarchy seems less intimidating. Wait, Driscoll said. Wait, the beef at dinner, that was from the trained dancing cattle? Celebrant glanced at the young man, realizing she didn't recognize him. Yes? They said, he sputtered, at the beginning of the show that it takes years of dedicated work to train the beasts. You had them slaughtered? Well, of course, Celebrant said. Why? He exclaimed, ignoring the guards on the other side of him who were hissing for him to be silent. Why under the firmament would you do that? Celebrant wasn't offended so much as she was confused. Nobody had ever spoken to her this way. She cocked her head, trying to understand the young man's state of distress. Well, she said, you wouldn't expect me to eat untalented steak now, would you? Untalented. Slowly, Driscoll's brain processed the words. He took it all in, her legitimate confusion, the night's extravagance. Then it slipped out. The words that would change a life and perhaps a nation. By endowment above, he whispered, you're the most spoiled thing I've ever seen. Several handmaidens gasped. One of the guards straight on fainted. Celebrant merely pursed her lips. Spoiled, she thought. I wonder what that means. Chapter 2. Spoiled. What an odd word, the princess thought as she stood on the balcony right after the word had been spoken. Like soiled, perhaps? No, that was a dreary word. Maybe spoiled meant something like oiled. She'd learned about perfume recently in her studies, and those generally started with a fragrant oil as a base. And yet her handmaidens looked so scandalized. Plus, one guard, upon hearing the word, had immediately fainted. Why would a word make someone faint? She cocked her head and looked to him as the other guards caught him and set him down. Then she looked to the man who had spoken the offending word, and he was now blushing deeply. Now, over the last few months, the princess had begun to realize that something was off about the way people interacted with her. She couldn't define it, as she had very little to use as a frame of reference. She could only watch others and see how they interacted with one another. She was not socially adept, but she did realize she wanted to know what this word meant. In order to learn, her gut said she needed to minimize what had just happened. Whenever there was a big fuss, people got extra touchy around her. Therefore, she decided to shift everyone's focus away from the guard who had spoken the word, and instead on the poor one who had fainted. Oh, she exclaimed, he must have locked his knees. You're never supposed to lock your knees. Someone said send for the palace surgeon. Then everything will be okay. They did, and it was. Such a curious experience. They all seemed relieved by the fuss over the fallen soldier. When the surgeon asked what had happened just before the soldier collapsed, Celebrant allowed herself a tiny lie and said she didn't remember, that she'd been staring up in the sky and contemplating her father's great love for his people. The servants had been chatting about something, but she didn't remember what. This made everyone relax further, including, noticeably, Bokal, the head of her bodyguards. How to describe Bokal? He was a soldier, yes, but you'd expect that of a bodyguard. Bokal was like a sausage grilled over a campfire after a long day of work. An expert chef will always make you a finer meal than the campfire sausage. Indeed, if you order a sausage from a good restaurant, it will most certainly be better than one of your home-cooked ones. And yet, nothing tastes better than a sausage grilled at the end of a long hike, made for yourself. Strange how that is. No fine sauces, no utensils, and minimal expertise, yet there's just something special about a good sausage made over a campfire. Likewise, if Bokal were to enter a swordsmanship competition, he'd most certainly lose. With only one good eye, but a glorious mustache, and a body slightly past its prime, he'd do fine. He wouldn't wash out, but he would also never win. Yet strangely, if you wanted someone protecting your family, your gut said, pick Bokal. There was something about this quiet wall of a man with the ruddy skin, bald head, and leathery complexion. Something that whispered to you that you didn't want the best swordsman, you wanted the best bodyguard. And he was it. Contests be damned. Bokal had arrived after the incident, but before the fallen guard was carried away. He studied everyone involved, then dismissed the young guard who had spoken the strange word. Celebrant noted the family resemblance, said nothing, but sat up all night thinking. Spoiled. She'd had extensive lessons in literature, poetry, and philology. How did she not know this word? So, once tonight's handmaiden was snoring, the princess slipped out of bed and went to her library chamber. Her father, of course, had spared no expense in outfitting it for her. He had not one dictionary, but 6. She chose Alstrom's great unexplicated reference of all known words and their origins, 18th edition. It had text so small she needed a magnifying glass to read it. There, right between spoffish and spoke was the word spoiled, defined as adjective, charming, comforting, pretty, princessly in every way, like Princess Celebrant. Ah, well, that made sense. Except, why was her name in the dictionary? She checked the other 5 and found similar definitions, though one had a typo. Then she spent the night poring through definitions of other words in the latest edition. The word beautiful used her as a reference. That made sense, as being pretty was her job. But so did the word charming and the word winsome, and even the word comely, a term she'd never really liked because she was sure it was hiding something. All in all, she was able to identify 37 places in the dictionary where her name came up, including the one for spoiled. She eventually returned to bed, but continued to have trouble sleeping. Something itched at her, like a barely whispered conversation at a party, when she'd been certain her name had been mentioned. She wanted to know what nice things people were saying about her when that happened, but when she spoke to them, they seemed to be hiding their emotions, as if they didn't want her to know the true depths of their affection for her. She was close to what she didn't know, but she was determined to find out. The next day was linguistics practice, where she was taught the languages of various nearby kingdoms so she could charm their dignitaries at parties. She was joined by Professor Candle, a bearded, squinty-eyed man who had reportedly come out of the womb carrying a parameter. He conjugated ancient words in the past perfect for fun and kept a list of homonyms in 17 languages because he found them amusing. His knack was the ability to see typos in spoken sentences. Yes, you heard that right. Professor, Celebrant said, rising and greeting him, I'm glad to see you. You were off for your anniversary last week, is that correct? Indeed, Your Highness, he said, bowing and removing his hat. His mustaches did seem to wave hello as he did so. Did you enjoy your new carriage? She asked. My what? Your new carriage. Father gets a new carriage for his anniversary every year. Did you pick gold or white for yours? White, Highness. Excellent taste, Professor, she said. Quite stunning with black horses. I hope you chose black horses. I did. She nodded in approval, imagining the professor's beard shaking as he looked out the window of his anniversary carriage while touring the grounds of his estate. How many books the professor must have in his mansion? She pressed him once where his mansion was, and he just said far, far away, which she took to mean out in the countryside, which made sense. She had one out there, though she'd never visited, but she heard it was nice. They settled into her study room, the third one, which was her favorite. It had birds painted on the trim, and the golden furniture was a little less stiff than the other two. She was attended by her bodyguards, as always, but notably for these lessons, they were required to stay on the other side of the room out of earshot. That was in case she needed to ask for delicate translations of terms that might reveal state secrets. She made shared tea with Professor Candle and discussed her progress in the Galtic language in advance of diplomatic talks concerning a joint offensive against the dragons. Eventually, at the appropriate time, she eased into the question she really wanted to ask. Professor, there's something I want to ask you. There, he said. There. There? You used the wrong there. Lovely homonym, that. Oh, of course. There is something I want to ask you. Anything, Highness. What does the word spoiled mean? She was watching, so she caught, as he stopped, tea nearly to his lips. Well, he said, recovering after just a moment, why don't we look it up? He stood and walked to the bookcase. I did look it up, she said, pouring in more tea. She liked these lessons, which was one of the times she could pour for herself. So she needed to practice which is one of the times she could pour herself. So she'd have practice not spilling if she ever needed to pour for a dignitary. The dictionary referenced me, saying the word spoiled is a flattering term and refers to someone who is like Princess Celebrant. Ah, well then, he said, walking back to his chair but not sitting. Why do you ask then? What did the word mean before I was born? It likely referenced a different princess, I'd imagine. He was sweating. She put the teapot back, then regarded him uncomfortably shifting from one foot to another. He hadn't even noticed the extraneous comma in her sentence, the one she'd deliberately imagined being there. Professor, she said, did my father redefine a word on my behalf, then ban the original usage? The professor emitted a low squeak from the back of his throat, as if he'd swallowed a mouse, or as if he'd been placed in an extremely uncomfortable situation, and now had to either lie to her face, with her knowing it, or betray the will of the king. She smiled and dismissed him, letting him scurry back away without having to say anything further. She sat, cup in hand, thoughtful. Then at long last came the moment, the one that should have happened when she was 13, the one she just nearly missed realizing some dozen times now. Princess Celebrant wondered if perhaps her family went a little too far at times. It was a little like wondering if the Ice Age was chilly, but it was a start. We'll do one more. I have like 5 chapters of this, but we'll only do 3 of them. The next day, Princess Celebrin rose early and had precisely 3 minutes and 27 seconds to ponder last night's epiphany. Then the day began. A quick meal of 3 pieces of fruit while dictating letters of comfort to the wives of men at war, each with as much personal touch as she could accomplish. Calisthenics next, with her 4 private trainers, followed by weights with 4 different trainers. The exercising took 2.5 hours collectively, with requisite laps in the pool for cardio. You might be angry at her father for requiring this rigorous schedule, but he wasn't to blame. Celebrin had spent her childhood in the Hall of Forefathers studying the portraits of princesses who had come before her and had a certain idea of how they should look. Being Celebrin, she hadn't considered that the artist might have created in the portraits with a certain flair for flattery. So in this, she had an image to chase that wasn't strictly impossible, but might be considered unrealistic if she hadn't somehow exceeded it. Before this explanation, you might have been imagining her as soft. In this, perhaps I've painted the wrong picture, so let me revise. Celebrin had the kind of flat stomach and toned muscles that people think is due to genetics, which I suppose is true, as the mindset required to relentlessly drive oneself toward peak physical conditioning certainly has some kind of genetic component. Celebrin's job might have been being beautiful, but she wasn't going to depend on that for lack of effort on her part. Hence the exercise regimen, where each morning she became a strawberry blonde tempest of activity. While no person should be forced to live up to such unrealistic expectations, Celebrin at least had a reasonably healthy interaction with it. And considering how spoiled in general she was, this was probably one of her more benign misunderstandings. Exercise was followed by a short bath, and then the next saw to her hair, which required daily brushing and conditioning. Simultaneously, her steward went over the day's appointments. In today's case, she had a state dinner to host, which meant a need for a wardrobe selections. So before lunch, she spent 2 hours going through options with her royal stylist. The Monique gown is particularly stunning, the stylist noted as 2 assistants took out a remarkable red dress and draped it across the couch. Current trends are toward more daring, Highness, and Monique is extremely well regarded. Yes, Celebrin said, arms folded as she considered. Check the guest list. Is Lady Gravita attending? The younger or the elder? The younger. Let's see. Yes, Highness. She's engaged to be wed as of last week, Celebrin said, and she loves Monique gowns. She'll be in one for certain, and it would be unseemly for me to show her up on such an important time of her life. Let's look for something a little less showy. We could go with the DeMarco, the stylist said, pointing for assistants to bring out a plain brown gown with ruffles on the wrists. Ashlyn, Celebrin said to the stylist, I said less showy, not funeral ready. Have you lost your senses? Ashlyn grinned. Well, you know how everyone imitates your fashion choices the week after an event? Imagine the panic as they all try to obtain dresses 3 decades out of style. Celebrin looked to her, then gave a hesitant smile, finally picking up on the humor. You'll have to forgive her. Celebrin wasn't dense. More, she'd spent her life in a low-density environment, and her brain had adapted. After her revelation the night before, however, she found herself seeing things just slightly different. And she realized she'd always liked Ashlyn, though she'd never defined why before that moment. Few people ever joked with her, and even if they did, she didn't always get the jokes. So she could appreciate, even if she didn't always get the jokes, she could appreciate someone that tried. Have you ever considered it, Ashlyn whispered, wearing the most ugly thing imaginable just to tie their brains in knots? I couldn't. This is a very serious event. Ambassadors from 7 different kingdoms will be attending. Celebrin hesitated, then leaned closer. But out of curiosity, what is the ugliest thing you have, Ashlyn? Ashlyn practically glowed as she grabbed a box off of one of her carts. She waved the princess over, then with a great deal of pomp, produced the most ridiculous of all hats. It was bright pink, with what appeared to be a mass of bubbles on it made of glass. These surrounded a long pole which had streamers on the end. Ugliness is, like beauty, ordinarily a matter of perspective, but there are some few items that transcend subjectivity. This hat can be considered the example, too earnest to be a joke, too audacious to be an accident. The product of someone who was simultaneously skilled enough to create, but oblivious enough to create this. It was a masterpiece of mediocrity and a monument to someone's own hubris. Ashlyn, being an expert in fashion, naturally collected such offenses to her craft, finding them wonderful. It's an artist thing. Celebrin's breath caught, and for the briefest moment she considered it. She actually considered it. I couldn't, she said, but thank you for showing it to me. Ashlyn grinned and packed it for her anyway. Celebrin soon settled on a blue ground, the color of the firmament in the sky, when the sun was shining. That, mixed with a brilliant sapphire brooch, should be just the right amount of ornate without being ostentatious, the right amount of striking without being scandalous. It's easy to draw attention. Drop some glassware in a crowded room and you'll see. It's difficult to draw attention gracefully. And say what you will of her upbringing, at this, Celebryn was an expert. From there, she picked a wardrobe for her father. He never paid attention and would just put on whatever was given to him, and coordinated the servants, tablecloths, brocades, and napkins for the dinner. She and her father needed to match without looking too similar, and with consideration of the guest list, she decided the decorations required a certain patriotic flair this time. That done, she ate a sandwich on the go for lunch and arrived at her second reading room for political tutelage for the evening. She went over the entire guest list, making sure she had names memorized, a question to ask each one, and is aware of the tragedies of any tragedies or political nuances. Do be certain not to mention kumquats, Highness, the tutor said, sliding his spectacles up his nose. Kumquats? Unexpected deluge upon Lord Branberry's orchards. A category 3, I'm told. It's set it raining for 3 weeks and washed out the entire crop. It's a sore spot for many and has disrupted trade. Many in the room have lost money from the kumquat fiasco. No kumquats, Celebryn said. Noted. After 2 hours of drilling on all the names, faces, and relationships, the tutor left her to study while she got her nails done. However, she found her mind wandering. For the first time of the day, she had the chance to really think about what she discovered. Her father had changed the very definition of words on her behalf. If he was willing to do that, what else about life didn't she know? What had been changed or obscured? It was a terrible thing to consider, and with some thought, she decided she needed further proof. And so, once her nails done, she did something truly remarkable. She put on the hat. The ugly hat, the masterpiece of mediocrity. Most of her handmaidens hadn't been there when Ashlyn had laughed at it, so they wouldn't know that it was ridiculous. But they had eyes. Surely they could see. She turned to the group of 20 women and girls. What, she asked of them, do you think of this hat? She received a group of blank stares. I like it, Celebryn added. Oh, it's wonderful. Looks like you're floating. So perfect. What a compliment to your bubbly nature, Highness. By the goddess of all gifts, she thought, pasting a smile on her face, it's true. They will tell me anything so long as they think it's what I want to hear. She looked to her bodyguard, hoping to see the young man from earlier, the one who had called her spoiled. But he wasn't on duty today, unfortunately, and it would have been strange to ask her bodyguards for advice on clothing, so she put away the hat, troubled. Further thinking on her state had to be delayed, however, for it was time for another short bath, then perfume makeup, the latter of which she applied herself with coaching from her makeup experts. She needed to be able to do touch-ups on herself, after all, so she couldn't just let them do it. After that, it was styling her hair, which she needed help for, though she decided on the style, a half-up, half-down set of braids with a cascade of hair on the left. As her hair was being done, her dialect coach helped her with pronunciations of foreign words and names, so she wouldn't embarrass anyone at dinner. She approved the seating chart, put on her gown and gloves, checked on her father to make sure he wouldn't be too late, then hurried to start receiving guests, arriving 30 minutes early just in case. Her father arrived 45 minutes later, wearing formal attire and his bright golden Dragon Slayer's medal pinned upon his chest. Together, they greeted each guest in turn. I'll spare you all of their names but one, second cousin Bentel. Duke, wine snob, and the man her father had not so secretly been wishing Celebryn would marry. All right, we're out of time, so I'm going to stop on that, but I will tell you where it was going. So the story was going to be, at that dinner, the king announces her cousin, who is loathsome, as the new heir, because there's a law that only someone who's slain a dragon can inherit the kingdom. And so she decides she needs to go kill a dragon. Now, why did I not decide to keep writing this? Well, as I told you, it is fun. It matches a lot of the storytelling styles of some things like you might have seen in Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. Reedy, I think it's pronounced Reedy, isn't it? And things like that. But it was too silly, too non-canon to fit in the Cosmere. So maybe I'll take it out of the Cosmere and finish it someday. But I thought you guys would have fun hearing from something that wouldn't be spoilers and that you don't get to hear anywhere else. If you want to read it again, we'll probably post it on my website. Otherwise, I do want to say I do have a book coming out in December. I should promote that. It's a collection of all of my science fiction stories, so I hope you enjoy that. It's called Tailored Realities, and I hope to see many of you at Nexus. Thank you so much.
Everybody, please Please give a huge round of applause for Brandon Sanderson. Now we're gonna do a photo.
Wait. If you are in costume, run up here.
This side. Go follow me.
And run up here if you want to be in the picture.
Turn on your flashlights. We are gonna make some noise. I count 3. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Excellent.